Hello, Ronski. It's
Hello,
lovely
Milan.
to see you again. Yes. So we have a conversation today, and we have been exchanging a lot of things in the last few months. And I wanted today to bring a subject about the world, how the state of the world is, and how healthy masculinity and the processes of coming closer and closer to healthy masculinity can actually help men navigate the different challenges that we are facing in the world. And maybe you have a couple of words that you would like to say about that. It could be also about a statement or a picture, a sketch of what is the world needs from a masculine, an integrity into the masculine.
I think that I can clearly identify, Milan, that there has been a change that's been very slowly taking place. And the change in the world began in the last century and was most probably started actually in England with the suffragette women movement. That was a movement for inclusion of the feminine, inclusion of women in just the ability and the right to be able to vote. But as the century moved on, that gradually grew into the feminist movement and it has continued on into this century. And now we find ourselves at the stage where, when we were talking earlier about different cultures, our culture in Europe, culture in Canada, where I used to live, and North America, is very, very still a very masculine culture. And that masculine culture is still in most countries of the world. But the actual trend, the change that's taking place in countries that are more successful is one of inclusion and more inclusion of women and female type energies in the actual social structure itself. So at least I offer it back to you. That's my overview
Yeah.
of the change, and we're only going in a direction much more of an involvement of more feminine qualities, more inclusion of women in all levels of life. And it's so important for the men that listen to this actual podcast for them to start to include the feminine inside of themselves. What I've called in the cards that I create the divine feminine. There is inside every man this an amazing archetype called the divine feminine, and most men really are not aware of that archetype or how it, what the form of it is inside of themselves, and the many aspects of the divine feminine, okay, that they still have to, not have to, but it would be good for them to explore, to be curious about, to remember, because it's inside of them, okay, and to generate it out there into their everyday lives so that they come in to everyday life as a balanced man, a mature man that has both masculine qualities and feminine qualities. And while half of them is missing, then they're only going to have half of a life. So my invitation to you is to respond maybe. Love to hear your own um, uh,
Hmm.
understanding of where our culture is at, where men are at in terms of their relationship with themselves and their masculine and their feminine.
Yeah, thank you. There is definitely a very interesting movement of transformation in our societies, and I'm going to talk about the Western society, of course, because I'm living in Europe. But so we have seen more and more of that, and we have lived in societies that have been very gender separated for centuries, for millenniums, and and we see nowadays that there is a fluidity that has started to happen. And you were mentioning the suffragette, the way that the women started to take more and more space in society because they wanted to have a voice to be heard in the political game. And they started to be also active in the political, places, they started to be prime ministers in the end of the last century. And I think right now we have the first woman prime minister in Japan, for example. I think she was elected a few days ago, which is staggering. Japan has in having a woman first prime minister. So there is something happening into that. What I have to underline here as well is that what we can also observe into those women that are coming high up into the political game, those women often have a lot of masculine qualities. So we see that women can themselves very much be in touch with the man inside of themselves, so they can actually fill up the role of a man in society. And there is a movement there. But so when we observe that, we can also see and feel that, like you said, men also have a feminine part inside of themselves. So we have a transition happening now into the fact that men become more and more aware of the feminine inside of them, and women more and more aware of the masculine inside of them. So we are coming closer and closer to a space where those, the way we denominate, the way we explain, and we feel our those energies, the masculine and feminine, suddenly is not anymore one or the other. You're a man because of your genitals are like that and so on. But it's much more subtle. There is more subtleties into understanding how those things work. And that nature itself is not separated into this is masculine and this is feminine and this is the interaction, but it is always a beautiful mix of both happening all the time. We, the night and days, there is always those middle ground, there is a blending of things together. And I think we are coming toward more and more awareness of how real power and real experience of life happens when we can be in both. We can be in the masculine and in the feminine at the same time. Or we can be aware of them. We can recognize their qualities and recognize that when one is present, the other one is also present, that everything includes both. And I mean, for example, we've been working for quite some years about with Tantra that is very clear about how things are working together and how awareness has a quality of the masculine, for example, and our energy, which is the Shakti, which is the feminine energy or the feminine aspect of existence, is energy. So everywhere you see energy, it is actually a feminine kind of quality, which is very interesting because there is energy everywhere. So we are learning, I think, slowly to recognize the primordial state of what we call polarity. That there is something, we're going deeper. It's not anymore about the surface, like, oh, you're a woman or you're a man because of your genitals, but there is something deeper. Also in the way we look at the world around ourselves and how things move, the fluidity between things. So I think it's a very exciting time to be living in because there is so many interesting aspects that are accessible to us because of the fact that we can step back and we can have the time to observe those things. That there is not such a rigid structure in society that closes us into the roles that we are supposed to be defined into because we are either a woman or a man. And and I think it's there is something happening in the world in those directions. So it's empowering women to be more active in society and bringing maybe a little bit more reason into the chaos that we're living in. And also, it's bringing softness into the masculine, that the masculine consider life with other kind of perspective than it used to have. That there is a little bit more concern about nature and about sustainability, for example, which is, I think, very important and is a very feminine quality into thinking about the nature, for example, and sustain it. Pardon me. And Um, yeah, so I sneezed, and now it's gone. Would
Uh,
you like to say something to bounce back?
Well, as usual, I love everything you said. I think one of the things you talked about that the masculine and the feminine is primordial, and by that it's everywhere in everything in existence, in on our planet, around our planet. Okay, and so having a balance of those energetic forces, knowing the masculine inside each man is important, but also embodying, integrating, enjoying, celebrating the feminine, knowing what those different aspects most probably are. Each man can figure that out or decide, whatever, okay. But if you want to have qualitative relationships, and first of all, a qualitative relationship with yourself, then you need to embrace and embody the feminine inside of the man. And if you want to have a successful, real, beautiful in service life out there in the world, okay, again, you want to embrace all aspects of the feminine, including nature and its many manifestations and stuff. So,
Mm.
um, I think that highlights a little bit that we're going, where our planet is going very slowly, but it is certainly on the move in that direction. For those countries, like here in Europe, in a socioeconomic structure, okay, what we see is that the masculine still dominates and is insistent and wants to control like it always has. And that is causing a deconstruction. And those societies, for instance, in many of the European countries, they will eventually not work so well, and people will have challenges. And those
Hmm.
challenges right now are increasing.
Definitely.
So anyone who does actually include more of the feminine in their life will be able to handle what's coming, and maybe together we can create a better social structure that is more balanced, is more equal between masculine and feminine. That would
Mm.
be my that would be my dream come true. That would be wonderful.
Yeah. Can you eventually, for the man listening, or for even the woman listening, um, would you maybe name a couple of things that men can do to get in touch with their feminine side? Just simple things that a man who's curious and desire to get in touch with those feminine side of himself, or even a woman for that matter, who can practice every day.
Yes. I would say first things is buy Marshall Rosenberg's book about feelings, and for men to start to realize that they need to cultivate their feelings, to be in touch with their feelings, to be able to know their feelings, to be able to express their feelings, to be able to receive another person's feelings. Okay, so that they're and feelings, in a sense, really, is a feminine quality. I mean, of course, it's as masculine as much, but for men to be able to communicate, okay, with the world we live in, they need to have access to their feelings. So expressing their feelings, certainly seeing if there's a class that's being offered in nonviolent communications and stuff, because our communications, the masculine way that men often communicate, is quite aggressive and is not inclusive. So we want to have use feeling words that are generative, appreciative, and affirming, positive. So that would be the first thing that comes to mind. Um, Another thing would be for men to make sure that they have a close woman friend,
Mm,
and for them to seek counsel. Ask, what do you feel? What do you think? What's your opinion? What's your ideas about this? If there's opportunities to co-create and do something, do it both with men and women.
Mhm.
Have balance in your life.
Mm.
Okay. So inclusion of the feminine in your life would be very, very important. So those are the first things, at least as a beginning place. Each man has to decide how he would like to do that in his own unique way. But
Mm.
certainly having more feminine company, more feminine culture, more feminine engagement, and uh, and being able to be in contact with their feelings in a much more profound way, that
Mm.
would certainly move them in a very positive direction. It'll actually wake them up to a large part of what's missing inside of themselves.
Yeah.
And when you develop your feminine, here's the interesting thing. When you develop your feminine qualities, you mature your masculine ones. They work together in
Mm.
symbiosis. They do a dance there, a lovely dance. So
Mm.
my suggestions for today.
Yeah, thank you very much for that. I think is uh, a very important ground of understanding um, in a more like simplistic kind of way. I used to visualize that everything that is happening inside of myself is the depth inside of my flesh and inside of my feelings and so on. This is definitely in me is the feminine part of me. And the more I am intimate and open to really connect with that inner part of me, then the more I'm going to be able to give, to be outside of myself, like a man that is always getting busy doing things, like fixing things or building up things outside of his own shell, so to speak. And but what happens when I'm really in touch with what's going on inside of me? How do I create outside in the world when I really get in touch and really be harmonizing those inner world and outer world? So, but thank you very much for those really beautiful words, and we will meet again and carry on those conversations where we're gonna deepen things a little bit more. And if there is any questions or any comments, so please write down below in the comment section. And if you have any suggestions that you would like to hear us talk about, you're also very welcome to suggest it in the comment below. And and we'll see each other very soon again. Thank you, Ronski.
Thank you, Milan. It's been a pleasure being with you. I love the embodied intimacy that you share, and especially both your masculine and feminine qualities. I feel them, I receive them, I love them, I welcome them, and it makes for wonderful conversations and stuff to be continued. Blessings to you, Milan.
Thank you.